Hello, this is what I assume is going to be my Summer Games Done Quick 2018, not 2017 or 2019, submission video for Celeste 90%. I am submitting this game as a race with TGH, aka Tej. So, some stuff I kind of want to explain to start off. I have no reason to change my pause select. First of all, I'm playing on Japanese. Japanese doesn't matter at all. I just like the way the timer looks. Second of all, timer in the bottom right's for real time, since you know stuff relies on real time. But usually for the game, there's going to be a timer in the top left. We use it in game time. The file timer. Is there anything else? I guess I can explain the rest in the game. This game is very tech heavy, and it's more of a show, don't tell kind of game. So a lot of parts I won't have too much to mention, but every level every level does introduce something new. So I guess we'll get started. So to start off, this is the prologue. It's faster to jump. Every time you jump, you get a tiny speed boost. So you want to be jumping as much as possible. A bunch of short hops. It's not just air time. Nice. It's best, or easiest to notice here, because this music in the background is supposed to be synced up with you getting chased. And as you can tell, the music ends much later than it's supposed to, because we reach that spot a lot faster. So the bird tells us we can dash. There's 3 basic mechanics you can do in this game. The prologue showed us all of them. You can jump, you can climb, and you can dash. And now it seems really simplistic, but there's actually a lot you can do with these mechanics. So to start off, there's a dash jump. You're not supposed to be able to get your dash back in the air, but if you're on the ground long enough, you can keep your speed from the dash and get your dash back. Here I'm doing a trick called a huge. That's not the official name. There's not really one name for it. Basically, if you do an up dash into like a wall or anything, you're able to preserve your upward momentum. You'll be seeing that used a bunch in any vertical section. There's a few other mechanics, but they're probably best explained elsewhere. You notice that block didn't drop, that block's supposed to. So for all dropping blocks, if you jump the first few frames, I'm not sure if it's the first frame, you're on it, you don't actually activate it. This isn't really too important for any skips, but it's good to know. Here I'm doing a trick called neutral wall jumping. So if you go neutral on D-pad when climbing up, or it doesn't have to be the D-pad, but if you go neutral while doing a wall jump, you don't get launched as far back from the wall if you were holding a direction. Because you can actually gain height if you're neutral, but if you're not neutral, if you're holding any direction, even if you're holding it towards the wall, you won't be able to gain height. So that will be used in a few spots. So what I'm going to be doing mainly whenever there's flat ground or I need to go on a horizontal screen, just for movement in general really, is called a hyper dash. Some people call it wave dash. I guess there's like a difference between the jumping version and the not jumping version. But yeah. Oh yeah, I guess I should probably mention. So each level has a specific mechanic unique to it, except for the last one. I guess the last one kind of does too. But the mechanic here is dream blocks. So these blocks, as you can tell, they launch you in a straight direction from what direction you dash into them. So yeah, there's not really much to say other than that. It's a pretty cool mechanic. You can actually jump out of these blocks too. You'll see me do that from time to time. You can actually mash jump and do basically a double jump. You don't really get that much extra height from it, but you do get a tiny bit of a speed boost. Because the longer you're jumping out of it, I don't know. The way the game stores the momentum from dream blocks is pretty weird. Oh yeah, and I should probably mention this is pretty important too. I'm being chased by Badeline. That's not the official name, but I mean everyone seems to recognize it. It's basically canon. Even developers refer to her as Badeline. She's only in this level, obviously, but the way she works is much like the Shadow Mario or Dark Rayman from Rayman 1. Follow you, and if you come into contact with her, you'll die. And dying is not good, not very fast. That's the end of level 2. So coming up is Resort. Resort doesn't really have a unique mechanic. Kind of weird. You're going to see the first instance and probably the only real notable instance. If you dash through a screen transition, you get your dash back in the screen transitions. So you can use that to get that key a bit earlier. But yeah, I guess this is the gimmick of this stage, these dust bunnies. Basically they're just placed in a bunch of different ways to annoy you. This level is very heavy on the cycles. And it's important that I don't die in these screens, not only because dying is slow, but because the cycles are somewhat different between dying and entering the room from a transition. And some screens you actually get a better cycle if you die, but I mean the time lost from dying always negates it. But most of the time you have to wait even longer, so very important. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, these switches, you gotta hit all of them to move these blocks. They'll appear in a bunch of levels. Not too much to say besides that. Oh yeah, this level introduces keys. I guess that's also another gimmick. Don't remember if it's exclusive to this level. Don't believe so. Yeah, level 5 also has one actually, but keys are cool. This whole section actually is just so we can get that one key in the middle. It's also something that I should note is there's not really any glitches to speak of in this game. There's not really any notable ones. Mostly just exploits of how the game handles your speed when you're dashing. So here you can wall jump off that tiny little pixel before the spikes. You can do this in many places, but you're only going to see it twice, 90% run. Also, a cool little part about this area of the level is depending on what order you do these gelatin book, I'm not even sure what to call it. You can basically choose between 3 different areas. You have to go to each one anyways, so it doesn't really matter which one. The order we do it in is whatever one's closest to Oshiro. Oshiro is the hotel guy, the guy we're talking to constantly. But depending on what order you do it in, the different color of books are whatever the garbage just laying around will disappear. Which is pretty nice, because in the area coming up, usually there'd be a bit more garbage around. Also, I died. Nice. So here you can jump on the water. So it looks like I'm basically jumping on the dust bunnies, but it's just the water. So yeah, once you hit all the books, you can access that key that was in the middle, like we saw at the very beginning of the area. Oh yeah, wait, did I even mention the refill gems? So these gems refill your stamina. You're only going to really see it used because it refills our dash, which is part of our stamina. But it's also important to know that even if you have your dash, if you're flashing red, which means your stamina is out, it will refill your stamina. And that means you can continue climbing, because once you're out of stamina, you can no longer climb. That is something really important to note, actually. Probably should mention that a bit earlier, but you know. Here is the first instance of a death abuse. Or I guess retry abuse in this case. You grab the key and retry. You'll see it used one more time in Summit, the final stage. Oh. Nice. So yeah. That's the end of the stage. Oshiro gets really mad at us because Battlein bullies him. And he's not a fan of being bullied. Reminder not to bully. So he chases us. This part is also very heavy on the cycles. Oh, missed one. So we have to worry about Oshiro's cycle and the dust bunnies, which makes this part pretty annoying. That basically wraps up Resort. This final screen's pretty easy. I say that and I'm probably gonna get owned. Nope, we're good. So this stage is Golden Ridge. The gimmicks here are probably my favorite. So there's gonna be wind, which, you know, everyone loves wind in video games, and bubbles, as you just saw. So the bubbles basically give us a second dash, except it has to be in that one spot. And the wind, depending on the direction of the wind, will either help us or try and hinder us. So, because there's wind that pushes you back, that will probably seems like it'd be really slow. But it actually just helps demonstrate how fast ultra dash, or not ultra, hyper dashing is. Ultra dashing is something different completely. Also, I guess there's clouds. These clouds, you can do a dash jump off them. The timing is kind of awkward for doing those dash jumps. You can also do hyper jumps off of them, but you rarely use that. But yeah, they launch in the air, give you a bit of a height boost. So here's a pretty cool trick. It's a slight auto-scroller skip. I mean, we do most of it, but here if you do a hyper into that block, you don't need to do a reverse hyper, I'm just used to it. But if you're hypering and you're touching that block in any way, you get a giant speed boost, which lets you clear that gap. Oh. Neat. Here you can do another auto-scroller skip, but it's not really viable for full game runs. No one's even done it in an IL. It's pretty tough. But basically you would do a bunch of pixel wall jumps along that little ball of spikes. It's really cool. I've never been able to do it myself. Yeah. That's the bulk of the level. This next part is just a bunch of heavy wind. Which means ultra dashing is even more important than it was before. Also snowballs. I don't remember if they were in the level earlier, but they aim and fire wherever you are. And they're pretty annoying. You gotta be careful. Make sure you don't get owned by the cycle. Here I jump on the break and block. I'm sure I've seen many of those break and blocks, but I'll mention it now. It's easiest. If you jump when you're on that breaking block, it'll break faster. It breaks immediately. So every time there's any block like that, I want to be jumping, so it breaks as soon as possible. Also, a side note is I lose some time RTA to other runners because my computer is kind of bad. It's not like a huge deal. Nothing catastrophic, but it is like a 20-second to 30-second deficit. But RTA doesn't matter, obviously, for this game because we're using game time on the leaderboard. So here, one of the main gimmicks are these blocks that change their position when you dash, and red bubbles. So much like the regular bubbles in level 4, these red bubbles will just go on until they hit a wall. So here's a little skip that I messed up a bit. Normally I have to go to the left and ride a bubble, but that's really slow. So instead, what we do is go on that platform and dash across to a hyper. It's kind of precise, but not really. So here, much like the first area, you're supposed to get a key and open that door at the bottom, but the developers put in that bubble. Go me. They put a bubble in because there's a bunch of bonuses in this game, like strawberries. You've probably seen a few strawberries. It's really good, but you don't get the strawberries obviously because it's slow. But there's some hearts also. Hearts unlock bonus levels, most notably core, which you won't see in the run. But the reason that bubble exists is because the way to get the heart in the stage requires getting the key and then riding that bubble, so you skip opening the door. You're using the key elsewhere. It's kind of cool. Anyways, so this part of Mirror Temple, we look in the mirror and honestly I don't remember what happens in the story. But now we're playing as this enemy that we've never seen before, and we gotta attack ourselves. And now basically all our inner demons or whatever have been unleashed in this temple. Our inner reflection. Really makes you wonder why it's called Mirror Temple, huh? Haha. Anyways, this next area is going to have a bunch of those little enemies we saw. Actually, they're going to be introduced right here. So we don't actually ever get in the sight of that guy, but these guys charge at you, depending on your position. And they'll always aim for where you are, or where they last saw you. They have a line of sight. They won't just charge you even when there's a wall in between or whatever, but you know. Oh. Also, these guys can break these red blocks here. I'm gonna lure them to hit that red block using a specific set of movements. That's that area. Oh, nice. So coming up is probably the biggest actual skip in the game. So over here you're supposed to get a bunch of keys, open up the way for a red bubble to launch you over here, but you can kind of do a reverse dash jump and then keep your dash and up left over there. And now we're over here super early. And one of the coolest parts in the game is coming up after the screen. Here I'm going to lure this guy to break this block and hit that switch. Yeah, there's no luck in this game, like at all. No RNG. There's no meaningful RNG. As far as I can tell, the particles and lights are completely luck based. So you know. Nice. But that's not really important for the speedrun. Okay, so here's our bud Theo. He's integral to the story. But all you need to know for this area is we need to bring him to the end, and he's stuck in a crystal. So we gotta carry him. These yellow doors at the end of the stage won't open. You can also hit switches, as demonstrated here. Yeah, this area is really short, sadly, but it's really cool. So we just kind of have to parkour from this stage. There's two ways you can go here. It's much faster to go up because hitting that button and using that momentum pad, quite slow. So here's the eyeball room. It is the worst room in the game. So what was happening there was pulses of 2. Like there'd be 2 pulses and then a brief break would come at you. Ideally what you would do is you would dash right as the pulse hits you to negate the effect, but I kind of messed up the movement a wee bit. So this area, I'm actually using analog right now, so for most of the game I use D-pad, but there's a notable advantage when using analog when controlling the feather because you have full range movement, and it actually saves quite a bit of time, somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds. So it also makes a bunch of skips a lot easier with these feathers, and as you might imagine what the feather does is it lets you fly. Pretty self-explanatory gimmick. There's also those Wololos, which basically if you dash, or the direction you dash into them, they have like blue sides. You say like this one's all blue. You dash into them, and yeah, easy every time. Here we're doing neutral wall jumps again, very briefly to get up here a bit earlier than we're supposed to. And there, that was a block that drops, much like the ones we saw in level 1, and I'm sure elsewhere, but I can't think of it right now. So you want to do a hyper off the Wololo to keep your momentum. And then you grab onto the block, and it drops early. Normally, the intended way is the Wololo would ram into the block, it would drop, and then you'd have to activate the Wololo again, and that's kind of slow. Also, if you're wondering why they're called Wololos, it's because the noise they make sounds like Wololo. That's not their canon name, but it is the correct name, regardless. Also, there's something important to know about these bumpers. You will see it very shortly, but if you're holding the opposite direction of the bumper, or the direction the bumper's going to launch you, I guess. I'm not sure exactly how to explain it. You get a speed boost. So here, I'm holding right, so I get launched much further right. It allows me to skip that bumper. So I guess I should just mention where the game stands currently. The game currently, in game time, is at 33 minutes as the record. It's a mid 33. That's obviously going to go down a lot between now and when the event actually happens. Go me. Oh, go me times 2. But yeah, the game's been pushed down a lot. It's only been out since late January, and it's March 10 right now. The 10th, if you will. Here there's 2 drops that skip a large portion of the level. Sadly, if you do that second skip, the second drop right here where I dash to the right, you miss a checkpoint. But the good part about this game, in a race setting and just in general, is that every room is so short, tiny. Maybe not tiny, but the place between checkpoints, because every room gives you a checkpoint, super short, so mistakes rarely cost you more than 10 seconds. And even on some of the longer rooms, most of them have like a midpoint. Not all of them. There's one in Summit that doesn't. That is like a solid 20 seconds of gameplay. But it's also a pretty easy room. Go me. So mistakes never cost a whole lot of time, which is always good. So this is the Badlands fight. So we saw Badlands level 2 chasing us. And now she's fed up and going to attack us. So the way this boss works is you gotta just run into her a bunch. And she changes the level terrain. It's actually a really cool take on a boss fight. A lot of people's favorite part. It's not mine, but it's respectable. This whole boss, much like Oshiro, the final part of level 3, is very reliant on making cycles because of how her attacks work. She has 2 attacks, this laser attack, which she's going to be doing from now on for the most part, and the tiny bullets. She can fire in bursts of 2 sometimes, it depends on the room. So ideally, we'll never have to wait for a cycle if you do this fight right. That being said, it's kind of risky. Like there, that's quite a tight cycle. Can't really tell, but it's really easy to die there during that cycle. Oh. So the second phase of the fight is a lot shorter, but it introduces these moving blocks. Oh, I messed up with screen transition. Sadly, it's super short, like I said, so you won't see too much more of the moving blocks. Okay, and this is the final screen of the Badlands fight. This screen's pretty important in terms of cycles. You can skip this cycle here, do it well. So here, we're done the boss, and Badlands basically is like, we should team up. Or maybe we're like, we should team up, I don't remember. Probably us. We're the reasonable ones. So this run's been pretty rough so far, but still well on pace to be under estimate, so you know, all's good. So that wraps up Reflection. Now we're going on to the last level, Summit. Summit is a solid third of the run. It is about a 9.5 minute level when done well. So there's multiple sections. Basically, what happened in Reflection is we were launched down at the very beginning, and we were going up. Badlands like, we can't go any higher. Because Badlands basically, the embodiments are personified anxiety, I guess, is the best way to put it. I don't know what I was doing there. I should have just did the safer strat. Oh well. So now we fell all the way to the bottom mountain, but now that we teamed up, we can go all the way back to the top much faster. So we're going to see a bunch of familiar looking areas that are based off the previous levels we did. This first area isn't. But here we see the first level, Forsaken City. So each section will end with Babylon, at least until the very last part of the level. So whenever you see a purple ball, that basically means the section's over. Here's a dream block section again. You're going to see a bit more use out of that jumping out of, or double jumping out of blocks I mentioned earlier. Not a whole lot more, but a bit more noticeable here. Most notably here, you can skip hitting that spring on the left by doing a jump out of that block and then up dash. Oh, I'm doing this slightly differently than I used, or am used to. Okay. That's the dream block section, basically. Important to note, when you hit Babylon, your position doesn't reset. So in order to do that up left dash, I did it through that set of blocks. I have to make sure I'm like right under her. If I'm not, I have to abort it, or I can try go for it and most likely die. Your position is quite important. I'm messing up the cycle. Oh well. So yeah, much like the regular level, this area is super cycle heavy. Luckily it's a lot shorter than Resort. That cycle at the very end in particular is pretty rough. So here we're gonna see a strawberry and actually get one. Oops. At least most likely. There's a chance I missed. No, I got it. So it's actually faster to go into that hidden area than do the level intended route. And same with this. We're gonna go on the bottom path because it lets us do more hypers. The more hypers we're doing, the faster we're going, so you know, gotta go fast. Here's an auto-scroller skip. Use the momentum from the block, you can get over here, and then you do a huge. That saves about 10 seconds. This has been a pretty rough run so far, but this summit has actually been kind of decent. This is good. Another battling section. You can hardly notice the wind here. Also, I guess it's important to note you can dash cancel. I mean, I've been doing it the whole run. Seems kind of self-explanatory, but you're able to cancel stuff by dashing. So if you're being launched up, you can dash right and cut all your vertical momentum. It's good to know. Oh. So here you can get this key a bit early, much like one of the skips in Mirror Temple, I don't remember which one. You can skip getting a red bubble by just doing a precise wall jump. It's not too precise. It looks a lot more dangerous than it actually is. Oh. You can actually skip the doors here, but it's really risky and it saves very little time, so I'm not going to do it. There we go. So now we're heading to the final part. So everything up to this, except the 0 meters, I guess, has been retreading old ground. It's been based off old levels. But here's something completely new. There's no real gimmick here, except we keep hitting Battling to go up. So this is basically the real summit. Very first part here will have heavy wind going down. So it's important that I time all my dashes very well. So if I don't, it's easy to get launched into these spikes. A cool glitch as a result of downward wind is we can actually jump off the spikes below us. It's not consistent, but the way the game registers hits and damage means you can sometimes get away with hitting the spikes. Oh, stop dying. Oh, I'm not. Okay. Yeah. There's not much to say here. Each flag acts as a checkpoint, which is why these screens are so much longer than the ones before. It's also possible to miss the flags, like I just did. You don't need to hit them all. You will actually go out of your way, or not go out of your way, but you'll skip one coming up here, because it's super far out of the way. And it's also really easy. So we went from 9 to 7. You probably saw 8. Not much reason to go over and get 8. So we're nearing the very end. There's a countdown. You know, very exciting. Like I mentioned earlier, I lose time RTA, so this RTA isn't even fully indicative of what it would be like on a computer that I'd imagine isn't from 2013. That being said, I'm still way underestimate. So yeah. This is the final flag. You hear the music stopping. This is very serious. And time is coming up as soon as I skip the cutscene, which is right now. Time. 38:31. RTA. Wow. And more importantly, my in-game time is 35:16, which is not bad at all. For no reset, run out of like nowhere. A minute 40 off PB. Could be worse. Yeah, the credits roll. That was Celeste. I hope you consider the race submission. I know the commentary probably wasn't that great, but I hope I was able to explain stuff at least well enough so you have a somewhat better understanding of the game. Here's that Prologue. As you see, we only got one strawberry, so we don't have a very good pie. And we died 21 times. 2 times were intentional. So it's actually only 19. But yeah, that was Celeste. Hope you enjoyed it.